Hello and welcome to Buffy and the Art of Story. If you love the Buffyverse and you love telling stories or just taking them apart to see how they work, you're at the right podcast. Today we're talking about Angel Season 1, Episode 6, Sense and Sensitivity, where Angel goes undercover to help Detective Kate Lockley, and sensitivity training causes chaos at the police precinct, putting lives in danger. If you are looking for episodes about Buffy the Vampire Slayer, you can find every episode from the pilot, Welcome to the Hellmouth and the Harvest, to the season finale, chosen by scrolling back in this podcast feed, or you can find them on YouTube or on my author website at lisalilly.com. And I am Lisa M. Lilly, author of supernatural thrillers, traditional detective mysteries, and the Writing as a Second Career books for fiction writers. There will be no spoilers for Angel in the podcast, but I do from time to time reference what happened in the whole of Buffy the series, so proceed at your own risk if you have not watched all of Buffy the Vampire Slayer yet. Okay, let's dive into the Hellmouth, or maybe just Los Angeles. Sense and Sensitivity aired the first time on November 9, 1999. It was written by Tim Minear and directed by James A. Contner. It starts as it should with an opening conflict to grab the viewer's attention. A blonde woman chases a man in a dark coat down an alley. When she catches him, we see it's Detective Kate Lockley. She kicks him and knocks him about a bit as she cuffs him. She tells him she guesses she struggles with expressing her feelings. A bit of foreshadowing for what the episode will deal with. This man was supposed to meet Kate at the station for questioning. It seems like he is some sort of recalcitrant informant or source. Now instead, she's taking him in. She tells him, "You have the right to remain silent, but I wouldn't recommend it." At the station, Kate questions him about little Tony Papazian, a crime lord, showing him photos taken of Tony the day that a county supervisor was murdered. Tony has seemingly disappeared, and Kate wants to know where he is. The informant sneers at her. He heard the county supervisor died by suicide. Two male cops watch the interview, and one of them intervenes when Kate shoves the informant against a wall. The cop, Harlan, tells Kate that he should have gotten her out sooner, and he laments that the department has no other way to find Tony Papazian. The scene cuts to an opening conflict for Angel investigations and a subplot between Angel and Cordelia. Angel is in the tunnels fighting a demon with many, many tentacles. Doyle throws him a sword. Angel says it's about time and kills the demon. Then he walks off after telling Cordelia and Doyle to dismember it. Cordelia suggests to Doyle that please and thank you go a long way when requesting dismemberments. She thinks, too, that Angel uses his tortured creature of the night thing as an excuse to be rude and insensitive, more foreshadowing of the main plot here, as well as some aspects of the subplot. She says that, sure, he's nice to the downtrodden, but he ignores the people close to him who matter most. As she talks, ironically, behind her, a demon tentacle grabs Doyle and starts choking him. Cordelia doesn't notice, and she finishes, "Can you say clueless?" And we go to credits. That scene was the story spark or inciting incident that gets the plot rolling for that subplot, which continues when Cordelia and Doyle come into the office covered in green goo. Angel starts to tell Cordelia there's something she needs to do, and she cuts him off. She's not doing anything until he asks how the demon dismembering went. She reminds him he left them there to deal with a giant calamari. Angel says he assumed it went okay since they're both here and asks what her point is. Cordelia tells him it is possible to brood and show a little interest in the feelings of others. Doyle chimes in, "Oh, she thinks you're insensitive, and not to bring up the irony, but hey, consider the source." Cordelia also tells Angel, "It's like you don't have a pulse." And Angel responds, "I don't." Kate walks in and interrupts, and they go into Angel's office. Cordelia comments that Mr. and Mrs. Spock need to mind meld now. Now we get the story spark for the main plot of Angel assisting Kate in finding Papazian. I have some questions about whether that is the main plot, but as best I can tell, that is it. Kate tells Angel all her sources are dry, but she knows Tony's planning to leave town. She doesn't want that to happen, and she'll pay Angel to find him. But when he does, or if he does, she warns Angel to call her, not to do anything else. Angel thinks she doesn't want to get a reputation for going outside her department for help, but she tells him she doesn't want to get a reputation for getting him killed. In the next scene, Angel awkwardly tries to thank Cordelia for going through all the coroner's reports on the computer. It must be difficult. She's not too impressed by his attempt to be more considerate, but she does tell him that she found victims and victim parts washing up all over the beaches. Angel tells Doyle to research title charts that may help in locating little Tony's dumping ground. At the police station, another subplot begins when a silver-haired cop enters and goes past Kate's desk. Kate leaps up and asks if he was going to say hi, but he figured she was busy. They're both awkward and stilted, but it turns out this is her father, Trevor Lockley, and he is retiring from the force. There's going to be a send-off. Kate found out about it from some other people on the squad, not from her dad, and she tells Trevor she was invited to speak and wants to know if he wants her to, and Trevor says don't go to any trouble. A phone call interrupts. It's Angel calling to tell Kate he found little Tony. The scene cuts to Angel in his car at night. He's on the cell phone with Kate, who tells him to get out of there. She will be right there. But after he hangs up, he hears little Tony and his fellow thugs talking about how Tony is going out of the country on a boat, and Angel hears a small yacht approaching. A second later, Angel appears next to the thugs. He's wearing a colorful Hawaiian shirt and hat, and he pretends to be Herb Saunders, a tourist, asking where the boat to Catalina is. It's very fun, but the thugs don't buy it and lunge for Angel. He punches both of them out and says, "It's the hat, wasn't it? I knew the hat was too much." We're more than a quarter way through the episode. By this time, typically we see the first major plot turn. It should come from outside the protagonist and spin the story in a new direction. And we will get a new direction soon once Tony is locked up. First, though, Kate arrives. She is not happy with Angel. Instead of leaving, he dressed up like a road flare and put both their asses on the line. She's going to have to explain a lot to her lieutenant. Disgusted, she tells him to just go. Tony glares at Angel through the car window as Kate drives him away. At the station, Tony calls Kate sweetheart and looks her up and down, then tells her if he knew how bad she wanted him, he might have let her catch him sooner. She looks him up and down and counters, "If I knew how much you needed the exercise, I might have let you run a little longer." I do enjoy that Kate is very self-assured and strong, so we have a little more of that subverting the blonde woman as victim, including in that opening scene. Instead of a blonde woman running down the alley afraid, she is running down the alley chasing the informant. At about 13 minutes into the episode, we get that first major turn. An attorney from Wolfram and Hart answers Tony's phone call. They talk about the thorn in their side, and the attorney says, "We'll remove it," as a photo comes through the fax machine. Remember those? I know there are some still around, but hardly anyone uses them. We think, or at least I thought, the photo would be Angel, but it is of Kate. And we cut to commercial. One of many great hooks that this episode includes right before the commercial break. A good way to keep the episode moving and to keep the viewers hanging in there. On return from the commercial, the same attorney is at the station, arguing that Tony has to be removed from this precinct's custody. He's been abused there, and an as-yet unknown assailant who was probably working with Detective Kate Lockley assaulted Tony. And the attorney threatens to shed light into the police department's darkest corners, exposing police brutality. At Angel Investigations, Cordelia's really happy they had a simple find the crime lord case. But she observes that Angel is not happy. He has pensive face. Angel argues he always does, and she says, well, pensiver face. Angel admits he has a feeling there's something more going on with little Tony. Cordelia finds it fascinating that Angel is so attuned to an evildoer, but has yet to notice her new shoes. Angel starts to protest that men don't, but Doyle enters and says, "Great shoes, new." Doyle heard from a source that little Tony is in fact planning something, but he doesn't know what. At a bar where the cops hang out, Kate joins her colleagues and they congratulate her on catching little Tony. She learns that her dad bought celebratory drinks and she goes to join him at a booth. But his toast, instead of congratulating her, is aimed at undermining her, and he says, "Here's hoping the bus doesn't fall apart before the paperwork is done." Anyone who has had a parent who makes those kind of comments knows how devastating that can feel, even as an adult, when you're presenting something or you're talking about something you're really proud of and the parent just undercuts it with some sort of, oh, here's the downside, here's why it's not a big deal, or, oh, hey, it could go wrong still. So we're already getting quite a picture of Trevor and Kate's relationship. Another cop, Harlan, stops by with a flyer for sensitivity training for the whole department because of how Kate handled things. The scene cuts to a red-haired guy with glasses. His name is Alan Lloyd, and he is doing the training. He tells the cops gathered before him that he knows they don't want to be there, but he assures them that he'll give them the tools they need to manage aggression and anger. As a result, they'll be less exhausted all the time and will be better cops. Then he shows them a talking stick with some symbols on it and explains that whoever has it gets to speak freely and without interruption or being judged by anyone else in the room. He gives it to a cop named Heath, who at first tries to refuse. Alan gradually draws Heath out, asking about his family. Heath says he was one of 6 brothers. His mom raised them all alone. Heath had to learn to fight early. Alan asks about his feelings and then asks if there's anything he wants to say to his mother. Kate breaks the rules and interrupts and says, "Will you marry me?" Alan turns to her and tells her that sarcasm masks anger, and underneath that is a fear of loss, a fear of being hurt, and he asks who hurt her. She swallows hard and looks sad. Angel and Doyle meet in a gym where Doyle's informant, who is on a treadmill, tells them about something he overheard. And this is a good thing to keep in mind if you have a conversation that is basically just back and forth, one character getting information from another. If you can put all the characters in motion, it can help. If they can be doing something interesting, even having this guy on a treadmill adds a little bit of activity to keep it more engaging. The man says people who work for little Tony said no stupid bitch was going to get the best of Tony. Angel realizes Tony's gang is going after Kate. We're about 20 minutes, 20 seconds into the episode, so we're nearing the midpoint. Angel finds Kate at the police station, but before he can share his concerns, she apologizes for how she acted on the beach. She tells him the sensitivity trainer said she should, and she thanks him for all his help. Then she asks him to come to her dad's retirement party with her as a favor. It would be nice to have a non-cop around. He agrees, and she is clearly relieved that she has asked him and says it wasn't as hard as she thought it would be. Angel tells her she's in danger. He thinks Tony took out a hit on her. Kate says, wow, he's really acting out. She adds that Tony must be in a lot of pain. Angel asks if she's okay. The Wolfram and Hart attorney meets with Alan, the sensitivity trainer, privately. He wants things, the attorney wants things to move faster. Alan assures him there'll be results after tomorrow's session, and we go to commercial, so another great hook. At the retirement party, there's a really nice cake. Kate is wearing a pretty dress. She tells Angel she's excited but consumed with dread, so very unlike her to express so much emotion. And she tells him it's not about Tony's hit on her, it's about speaking public, which I think is very relatable. A lot of people have this fear of public speaking, and the moment before you do it, it can feel dire. Angel tells her that old saying, imagine the audience in their underwear. Kate looks him over and says, way ahead of you. She approaches her dad. She calls him daddy, tells him happy retirement. Angel congratulates him, and Trevor says, for what? All I did was live this long and not get shot. We learn a lot from that, which is that Trevor isn't just abrupt with Kate. He doesn't just deny emotions with her or stay reserved. This is how he is with everyone. And presumably no sensitivity training for him since he's retiring. Kate asks why he always does that, pretends important things don't matter. Trevor ignores that, and he tells Angel it's good to see Kate out with a man. He was starting to wonder if she leaned the other way altogether. Kate takes a long drink of champagne. We're well past the midpoint of the episode where I usually look for a significant reversal or a major commitment by the protagonist or both. There are definitely things happening. We know in the background that there's something with this sensitivity training, and there is this looming hit by little Tony. But there isn't that one dramatic moment that we sometimes see in the middle of an episode. In a few moments, we're going to get a significant emotional commitment by Kate. I'm hesitating because she's under the influence, as we'll find out, of this sensitivity training. So it is not, if we see her as the protagonist, usually at this point you want the protagonist to be taking charge, taking the reins, being the one who drives the story consciously. And this is something she does while under the influence, but it is a reversal for her, as we'll find out. Apologies to anyone who has made a comment recently. I have been recording well in advance, so this is the first time that I'm able to put in a recent comment. This is from patron Melissa about City of. Melissa says, another really good analysis. I find one of the differences between Buffy and Angel is the magical MacGuffin. Sunnydale has a Hellmouth and Angel has the powers that be. I've always found the Hellmouth to be a plot device that I do not question, whereas the powers that be are just, as the Brits say, woolly. There's something about mystical geography that feels more narratively believable than beings that want everything in balance. The fact of the power's existence raises so many questions that the show just isn't interested in. Like, why are they so invested in what Angel does? Do they care about anything else? Why are they never involved in Sunnydale, a place where the end of the world seems at hand more often? I think for me, the Hellmouth is truly uncaring. It doesn't have wants or desires that we know of anyway. It just is a sort of mystical Marianas Trench, but the powers that be feel a lot more like a transparent metaphor for the writers on the show. I love this comment. I had not thought yet about comparing the Hellmouth versus the powers that be, and I agree that the powers that be present more issues and questions. The Hellmouth, we find out early, draws all these demons and vampires and all manner of evildoers to Sunnydale. And as Melissa says, it just is. And it's easy to accept that premise. And then we find out in the episode with Marcy, the Invisible Girl, that it also can exaggerate what is already happening or create mystical phenomena out of emotions or events in ways that would not happen without it. The powers that be, on the other hand, even Doyle, who is coming to Angel saying, hey, I get these visions, I'm supposed to help you, doesn't know much about the powers. They are vague, their aims are unknown. And that makes it tougher too, because I do wonder in these early episodes, neither Doyle nor Angel seems to question what is the powers' agenda. Do they have an agenda? They must have something. They're sending Doyle out to contact Angel and to be his conduit to them, yet we don't know much about them. I don't want to spoil anything, so I will try to remember to continue to look at how do the powers develop, what do we learn about them, are any of Melissa's questions answered. Thank you so much for that comment, Melissa. If you are out there listening and would like to be like Melissa and send in a comment, please feel free to comment on the Buffy and the Art of Story Facebook page, on Patreon, on Instagram. I also post episodes there. Instagram.com/Lisa M. Lilly, or email me at buffystorypod@gmail.com. Kate is called over to speak. She starts out really well. She calls it the end of an era, and she says she knows her dad appreciates the attention and free booze, though he'll pretend he doesn't. A nice way to both honor him and use a little humor. She talks about all the years he put in, how much difference he made, and now it's over. And the tone starts to shift as she asks what he'll do now. I'm going to play this speech, and you hear her becoming more and more emotional and more personal, and it sets off a conflict in the bar.
After Mom died, you stopped, you know. It was like you couldn't stand the sight of me. Her face, her eyes looking up at you. But big girls don't cry, right? You said gone's gone, and there's no use swallowing. Worms and dirt and nothing forever. Not one word about a better place. You couldn't even tell a scared little girl a beautiful lie. God, I wanted to drink with you. I wanted you to laugh once with me, the way you laugh with Jimmy here or Frank.
What the hell I do to her in that class?
My best friend Joanne. Her mom was soft and she smelled like macaroni and cheese. And she'd pick me up on her lap and she'd rock me. She said she wanted to keep me for herself. But I was good and sweet. Everybody said I was. Do you realize that you've never told me that I'm pretty? Not once in my life.
Keep going, kid.
Well, I can't anymore, Dad. I can't campaign for the office of your beloved daughter. You closed your heart after Mom left us, and that's it.
That was so damn brave.
Are you kidding me? Her old man's party wasn't the forum.
You can't worry about protecting it.
One of the cops, Harlan, is very supportive of Kate, but her lieutenant is not. He and Harlan start fighting, and soon lots of cops join in. Trevor pulls the lieutenant out of the fight, and Angel gets Kate out of the bar. In the next scene, Cordelia comes into the office complaining about being called in late at night. What's the emergency? And she starts to ask why she thought it was a good idea to work for and she amends quickly to ventriloquist when she sees Kate. Luckily for Cordelia, Kate's too out of it to wonder about what Cordelia is saying. She behaves like someone who is drunk and over emotional. She tells Angel his eyes are intense. She sees an old soul when she looks into them. Angel keeps trying to get her to tell him about the sensitivity training. Kate finally shows him the flyer. She looks at Doyle, who has been listening as well, and says someone has a crush. And she tells Cordelia to really look at Doyle, but all Cordelia sees is bad polyblend. Angel finds Alan's address and decides to go there at what is either Alan's home or some sort of headquarters, but it looks more like a mansion. Angel snoops around. He enters this candlelit room. There's an ancient text there. Alan interrupts him. Meanwhile, Kate cries as she tells Cordelia and Doyle about her dad walking out on her at the bar. She says she needs to go find him. Cordelia and Doyle try to get her to stay, but she pulls her gun and waves it around. She's sorry to be insensitive, but if they try to stop her, she'll, quote, blow them the crap away, end quote. This foreshadows that however emotional she is, Kate is still well aware that she has a weapon and is ready to use it. Alan tells Angel that a whole bunch of demons give him power. He's a polytheist. Angel threatens Alan, who comments on Angel's rage, which he says is just fear, and asks what his parents were like. Angel vamps out and says his parents were great. They tasted a lot like chicken. Alan swings the talking stick. They fight, both of them gripping it. We could see this as the last major plot turn. That turn should arise from the midpoint, raise the stakes, and take the story in a new direction. It's a little hard to say if that's happening here since the midpoint is a bit fuzzy. This does more or less come out of the sensitivity training. That's what brought Angel there. But it doesn't exactly take the main plot in a new direction. That happens more because of the effect of that additional sensitivity training on the cops, which we are about to see, and that certainly raises the stakes. This is a term for the Cordelia Angel subplot because now Angel is going to be affected by the talking stick. At the station, a lot of cops are brawling. Heath, the one who was the first to have the talking stick, unlocks the holding cells, saying it's not right keeping the prisoners there. It makes them worse than when they came in. Little Tony smiles as the prisoners exit the cells and beat up poor Heath. Out on the street, another cop tells two drivers who just got in a car accident that no one thinks about his pain. He has emotional whiplash from dealing with this type of thing all the time. Angel meets Cordelia and Doyle outside the police station. They tell him the whole place is going nuts. They need to act fast, but Angel just wants to give them a hug. And we go to commercial. On return, frustrated with Angel's focus on emotions rather than dealing with the cops or helping Kate, Cordelia demands, "What's your damage?" Doyle says Angel found Mr. Sensitivity. Inside the station, Kate is leaving a tearful phone message for her dad, one of several. Outside, Angel tells Cordelia and Doyle that the talking stick is cursed and that Cordelia is so precious. Wolfram and Hart hired Alan to neutralize the police. Alan admitted it after Angel threatened him, and Angel looks very ashamed as he says this. He also learned there's no hit ordered on Kate, but that's only because Tony wants to kill her himself, and Angel refers to Tony as a poor guy. Cordelia and Doyle try to get him to snap out of it. Angel doesn't want to go into vamp face. He feels they judge him when he does. Doyle tries to get into the police station through the front door, but the cops have had enough of dealing with people and they bar the door. Inside the station, an officer recites a poem. Another one, I think this might be Harlan, approaches Kate and tells her how much it hurts to be rejected, how hard it's been to sit near her for 2 years and have her ignore him. And he becomes angrier and angrier as he talks, but the sound of a gunshot interrupts all of it. The scene cuts to the holding cell area. Tony has organized a group to go hunting for Kate. The scene cuts to a deserted room with computers. We hear Cordelia and Angel arguing outside. Angel doesn't want to break in. It's not right. And when they finally do, then he wants to leave a note apologizing for the vandalism. He refuses to follow Cordelia out of the room until she says the magic word. So remember her talking early in the episode about a please and a thank you, and now he wants her to say please. Tony stalks the station halls. He finds Kate, but Angel intervenes at the last moment. He says he's feeling some serious negative energy from Tony. Angel and Kate comment on Tony's body language. Cordelia, who entered with Angel, says, "We are so dead." We've moved into the climax of the episode where the opposing forces have their final confrontation. Angel suggests Tony needs to process his feelings. Tony comments that the sensitivity training really took, and he taunts Angel. Angel, though, grabs a chair and hits Tony with it. At the very same time, Kate pulls her gun and says something like, "Do you know how that makes me feel?" to Tony. Angel grabs Tony, says, "You know, Anthony, you can be a rainbow," and he slugs Tony to the ground, and not a painbow. Kate looks at Angel and says, "You," and Angel looks at her and says, "No, you." They hug Tony at their feet, a very fun and funny moment, and the opposite of the Mr. and Mrs. Spock mind meld. So Angel and Kate prevailed despite the sensitivity training. The episode moves into the falling action where we tie up loose ends and resolve subplots. Tony rants on the phone to the Wolfram and Hart attorney, who points out that Tony shot up a police station and tried to murder a cop in front of tons of witnesses. Wolfram and Hart opened the door for him. The point was to walk through, not go on a shooting spree. The attorney says they are ending the relationship, adding that they have more pressing issues. He looks at another photograph, and this time it is of Angel from the police station. At that station, things are calm again. Everyone's very subdued. Kate tells Angel internal affairs, thinks the punch at the retirement party was spiked. She asks if she said anything to him. He claims he's a little fuzzy himself. Trevor walks in. He got all the messages Kate left for him. Angel heads out, but pauses just out of sight as Kate tries to explain or apologize for the messages. Trevor calls her Katie, but then he says she made an idiot of herself, embarrassed herself in front of the guys, and as far as he's concerned, it didn't happen. Angel sees how sad Kate looks as she returns to sit at her desk, ramrod straight, her old stoic self, and that is the end of the episode. I really liked the use of foreshadowing throughout the episode and the great hooks before commercials that keep the episode moving, and not just before commercials, but before any scene breaks. I have a lot of questions about what is the main plot here. It probably is Angel helping Kate capture Tony, but the sensitivity training, yes, it's part of that, but it's more of a complication of that, and yet it feels like it is the main plot, the effect of the sensitivity training on Kate and the other police officers and detectives. That's how I always remember the episode. The challenge is that doesn't start until about 13 minutes in. It's after little Tony is captured. So it structurally is more of a turn in the Kate trying to capture little Tony plot. And the challenge with that plot is if Kate is the protagonist, we don't get to see her doing a lot. As you've heard me say before, the protagonist should be pursuing an active goal, which Kate is, be the main point of view character, which I'll come back to, and have the most at stake. She does have the most at stake, certainly more than Angel, who is hired to help her find little Tony. And she has a lot at stake emotionally in that subplot. But the point of view is largely Angel's. We do see Kate on her own, but we're more seeing this through Angel's point of view, or at least it's evenly split. And I mentioned in a previous episode that you can do that in a subplot. It doesn't cause as many problems. In a main plot, it makes it a little hard to tell, as here, what is the main plot, and that can make the story less interesting. Now, when Angel acts, for instance, when he finds little Tony and when he intervenes as little Tony's about to try to shoot Kate later, he is doing so because Kate asked him. So you could see Kate as the protagonist because she's directing everything. But that does make her feel less like the protagonist. My other issue with the plot is the struggle for a midpoint. You don't always have to have that major reversal or major commitment or both at the midpoint, but there should be some significant shift, and generally you do want your protagonist to be in control, to be driving the story at that point. And that's the struggle here too, is Kate is not doing that at the midpoint. Seeing the additional sensitivity training as the midpoint, because it is a serious reversal, is challenging because it occurs off screen. I don't think we need another scene of the sensitivity training, but that makes the episode feel a little bit flat. If it is Kate having that emotional meltdown, that works great for her subplot with her dad, but isn't as significant for the main plot. It could be that all the police get into that fight. All of them are clearly very emotionally challenged. That is really the biggest reversal. And what makes that not feel as strong is it isn't as personal to Kate. She and all her colleagues are emotionally compromised, I guess we'd say, but the struggle to figure out what is the midpoint is part of what doesn't quite work with the structure. All the same, the episode does move well, and that strong subplot between Kate and her father is really engaging. Her meltdown in the bar, it always makes me cringe, but it is intense and serious, and it's believable given where Kate is emotionally and the influence of this spell or talking stick on her. Then the ending is just devastating when she has exposed herself willingly or not, and her father just rejects all of it. There is no growth. There is no moment where he responds to what she has said, to her very real sadness and vulnerability. The buffyfandom.com wiki, that's buffy.fandom.com/wiki, reports that when Tim Minear originally wrote the episode, he included a sort of TV ending where Kate and her father hug, and Joss Whedon proposed instead that Trevor act as if nothing changed. And Minear said, if it had gone the other way, I think the whole thing would have collapsed. That's really Joss knowing best. I agree on that. What makes this powerful, this subplot, is that it does not change anything between Kate and her dad other than to make her feel worse. It is devastating, it is moving, and it makes me so much more invested in Kate as a character. In the end, this episode doesn't land for me, less because of the structure, which is a little different but still mostly works, and more because of the theme. Now, the Angel and Cordelia subplot has a fun theme, which is be careful what you wish for, something we see a number of times in the Buffyverse. Cordelia wants Angel to be more sensitive. Instead, he becomes super sensitive, and she briefly thinks he is going to analyze and empathize with Tony rather than fight. But he comes through, surprising us. And Kate comes through as well. Yet Cordelia is probably left with thinking that maybe as annoying as Angel's sometimes insensitivity can be, she might prefer that. She does not want to have to talk him into breaking in somewhere when it's clearly necessary, or going into vamp face when it would help in the fight. And this subplot raises good questions about how much emotion do we want to have on the surface? How much is it appropriate to dive into those emotions on the job? If you're enjoying the podcast and would like more Buffy-related content, there are lots of bonus episodes on Patreon. Go to the collections tab and look for bonuses. These include episodes about the arc of Amy, the witch, and Are We Doomed to Become Our Parents? Is Riley a boyfriend bot? And revisiting Welcome to the Hellmouth and the Harvest post season 7, plus many, many more. You can join the Patreon community and get access to all of the bonus content, as well as each regular episode a couple days early for as little as $3 a month. At the storyteller tier, for $7 and up, you also get a digital copy of Buffy and the Art of Story Season 1, Write Better Fiction by Watching Buffy, and access to all the modules in my online course, How to Plot Your Novel from Idea to First Draft. If you would like to join that storyteller level or upgrade to it and see if it's worth it, you can get a 7-day free trial. Just go to patreon.com/Lisa M. Lilly. That's patreon.com/LISA, M as in Marie, LILLY. And thank you to all the patrons who support the podcast, and to all of you for listening, and a special thank you to those who share the podcast on social media or tell a friend about it. It helps other fans of Buffy and Angel and the Buffyverse as a whole find the podcast. Subplots can work really well when they only raise questions and don't answer them. With a main plot, though, for it to have resonance, it needs to, however subtly, propose some sort of theory, some sort of answer to these types of questions. And that is the challenge with this episode. The Little Tony sensitivity training plot, to the extent it proposes any theory, seems to be saying that more sensitivity is bad. After all, Heath lets the prisoners out, he gets beat up, and he puts Kate directly in danger. He allows little Tony to go after her. Now, it turns out both Kate and Angel are still effective. Interestingly, though, they are the most stoic characters we see. So at best, we can say for people who are extremely emotionally controlled or repressed, or however we want to characterize that, maybe an overabundance of sensitivity doesn't harm them. Clearly for the other cops, it does, like Heath, and like that cop out at the traffic accident, and the one who barred the door to the police station. This is troubling. In addition, the whole idea of sensitivity training for the police is largely treated as a joke. This seems to be meant to be a funny, somewhat light episode juxtaposed with the deep emotion and the rawness of Kate's story. And treating something like police brutality for fun is really challenging, especially given that this is set in LA. There's a reference to Mark Furman, the detective in the OJ case. And those of you who remember, who read about it later, know that the testimony about misconduct of the LA Police Department was significant, and most people think that is why OJ was not convicted, because this detective had done or admitted to, or at least people believed he was guilty of, so much misconduct. There were other issues of LA, particularly police brutality, around that same time. So to make that reference and then to have an episode that posits that sensitivity training is bad and or a joke is really tricky to pull off, especially because the things we do see Alan saying, as annoying as he kind of is personally, seem like really good points. Anger can mask fear. Sarcasm can be a defense against being hurt. And for almost anybody in a high-stress profession, finding ways to deal with their emotions and their anger is beneficial. And when you take it to cops who are under tremendous stress and are in these life or death situations, for the most part, I have to think that some useful emotional training or tools could be really good for them, both on the job and off the job, to help them deal with the stresses. And that makes it more challenging to set up this story that seems to posit that you should not try to get more in touch with your emotions. Similarly, Heath letting the prisoners out, he muses, oh, it just makes them worse than when they go in. This is an argument about jail and sentencing, particularly for people with crimes that maybe are nonviolent or that we are hoping will reform, that prison is generally not a great place for people to reform. And there are many different viewpoints on that, and there's nothing wrong with taking that on, but it's dealt with in such a one extreme or the other way. Here, it just seems to be saying, well, that doesn't matter if you do anything to think, if you think about these issues, you're doing the equivalent of just letting murderers out to go and kill cops. So there's no nuance there, which makes it less interesting. The theme of Kate's subplot, to me, seems to be that sometimes in a relationship, you will not be able to reach the other person, that even if you are emotional and vulnerable, even if you change the way that you act and reach out, that does not mean that you will get the response you want, which is heartbreaking. But accepting that is sometimes necessary. Now, I don't know if we're going to get to that with Kate. We don't know what's going to happen going forward. And it's really sad to see her go through this. But there might be some value in the fact that she did get in touch with those feelings herself. And if she can accept that her father is not going to reciprocate, she may be able to move on. So I feel like there's, devastating as it is, there's a little more of a clearer message there. And of course, there is a theme about what is appropriate at work. Where is it appropriate to process those feelings? If that was more clearly the theme, I think that would work much better. Ultimately, I'm not sure there was a lot of thought given to the theme here. I think largely this was meant to be a one-off episode that didn't change the world of Angel significantly. And for me, that just makes it less intriguing. Moving on to the characters, other than Trevor Lockley, I had trouble telling one cop from another. The ones that I named, Harlan and Heath, I was able to name them only because I read the summary on the Buffy fandom wiki. That's probably fine because mostly they are presented as a group. We're looking at the effect on cops as a whole. It's Kate that we care about. Fitting with my thought that this was meant to be a one-off episode that doesn't change much, we don't have character growth here. I love Cordelia. She's very fun. I enjoyed the irony of her demanding sensitivity while she remains somewhat clueless. But nothing really changes here. In a way, we get a reset because she probably concludes she doesn't want sensitive Angel. It's unlikely Angel has changed significantly. I did like that we got a little of his inner life, that he, on some level, feels ashamed when he threatens people. He wishes he didn't have to do it. He doesn't like just breaking in, and that he feels a distance from Cordelia and Doyle when he goes into vamp face. And we saw this in Buffy, that he did not want Buffy to see him as a vampire. Kate is the most interesting character. It's tough because that speech is so hard to watch. She's so raw and exposed, but I really felt for her, and this episode made me much more invested in her as a character. Little Tony is pretty much a cardboard cutout villain. Wolfram and Hart is also an antagonist or villain, and I find them more intriguing. I do like that Tony reaches out to them, and ultimately it's more about Wolfram and Hart versus Kate than Little Tony. And Wolfram and Hart is where we see some expansion of the world building in Angel. We see a little more of how they work behind the scenes, their willingness to cut off from a client who does not listen to them is something new, and their continued focus on Angel, or heightened focus on Angel, is intriguing. In the very first episode, Wolfram and Hart became aware of Angel, or at least the one attorney we saw, Lindsay, became aware of Angel. He talked about a new player in town. We don't know if they've been tracking Angel since, but he is for sure on the radar now. So where do I rate this episode on a scale of 1 to 10, with 10 being my favorite Buffy episodes ever? I really did enjoy a lot of the humor, despite what I said about how the themes trouble me. I loved learning more about Kate. Ultimately, the main plot did not speak to me. Spoofing sensitivity training and pop psychology could be really fun in another context, but doesn't quite work for the reasons I already talked about. It's also not my favorite plot structure, and I like more interesting and layered villains. And not only is Little Tony not layered, Alan is not terribly interesting either, though I find his polytheist comment fun. Putting all that together, I rate this in the middle, 5 on a scale from, I guess, really 0 to 10. There could be a 0, I suppose, at some point. So I'll rate it as a 5, largely because of that insight into Kate. I might have gone lower otherwise, but I love that subplot. Oh, and the Cordelia Angel subplot I really enjoyed. As I was rating this, I did look back to see where I put other episodes, and I'm wondering if I rated In the Dark a little bit too low, because I put it at 5.5, but I am not going to go back and revise anything. In case you are interested, here were the ratings so far. City of, 9. In the Dark, 5.5. I Fall to Pieces, 5.5. Room with a View, 9. Sense and Sensitivity, 5. So a big mix already, not surprising in any series as it is getting started. Thank you so much for listening. Please feel free to reach out and let me know your thoughts about Sense and Sensitivity, or anything on Angel or Buffy. The podcast will be taking a short break due to some other commitments, but I will be back next time, and I hope you will as well, for Season 1, Episode 7, The Bachelor Party, where Doyle's estranged wife asks him for a divorce so she can remarry. Her fiancé seems nice, but Angel discovers he's hiding a major secret. You can find back episodes of Buffy and the Art of Story, as well as the Buffy and the Art of Story books and all my fiction at lisalily.com. To support the podcast, hear extra bonus content, and get each regular episode a few days early, join the Patreon community at patreon.com/Lisa M. Lilly. That's Lisa, M as in Marie, Lilly. Music for this episode was written and performed by Robert Newcastle. Buffy and the Art of Story is a production of Spiny Woman, LLC. Copyright 2025. All rights reserved.